When a widowed millionaire despairs over his twins' constant insomnia, no one expects that it will be their new black nanny who will do the unthinkable, changing their entire lives. That woman is drugging the children. The accusation from Gloria the housekeeper echoed through the elegant hall of the Whitmore mansion like a gunshot. Mr. James, it's not possible that two children who were awake all night are now sleeping like angels. She's doing something illegal to those babies. Keisha Williams, only 28 years old, stood motionless in the center of the marble hall, watching the 60-year-old housekeeper gesticulate dramatically in front of her employer. The accusations didn't surprise her. In fact, she had predicted this moment exactly 3 weeks earlier when she agreed to care for the 4-year-old twins who had terrorized nannies for 6 months straight. James Whitmore, real estate mogul and inconsolable widower, looked between his 15-year-old housekeeper and the young black nanny who had transformed his home from a place of constant screaming into an oasis of peace. For the first time since his wife's death, his daughters Ruby and Rose slept 8 hours straight every night. "Gloria, those are very serious accusations," he murmured, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Serious? Mr. James, this person arrived here from the outskirts of Detroit with no proper references." Gloria spat the words like poison. "And suddenly our girls, who scream from nightmares every night, sleep like babies? Something is very wrong." Keisha took a deep breath, her eyes briefly meeting James. There was something in that look. It wasn't just gratitude for the peace she had brought to the house, but a genuine curiosity about who she really was. Why would a woman with her refined education and impressive knowledge of child development take a job that made other nannies run away in tears? "If you insist on investigating my methods," Keisha said with a calmness that made Gloria hesitate for a moment, "I suggest we install cameras in the girls' room. That way, everyone can see exactly what happens during the nights." The suggestion took everyone by surprise. A guilty person would never ask for more surveillance. James frowned, studying the nanny's serene face. There was something about her demeanor, an unshakable confidence that didn't fit with a mere child caregiver. Over the past few days, he had noticed strange details. Keisha spoke 3 languages fluently, quoted child neuroscience studies with academic precision, and had a presence that made even important visitors respect her opinions about the children. 3 weeks earlier, when the employment agency had called offering her services, he had been desperate. 6 nannies had quit in less than 2 months. Ruby and Rose, traumatized by their mother's sudden death in a car accident, spent their nights screaming, crying, refusing to sleep. The entire house was in a state of exhaustion. Gloria had always made her opinion clear about those kinds of people, taking care of children from good families. But when Keisha arrived that first afternoon, something changed instantly. The twins, who were normally hostile towards strangers, approached her with curiosity. And that first night, miracle, they slept for 6 hours straight. "Cameras," Gloria stammered, clearly not expecting that answer. "Well, that's not necessary if she just—" "Actually," Keisha interrupted, taking her cell phone out of her pocket, "I've already recorded some of our nighttime routines to document the girls' progress. Would you like to see?" There was absolute silence. James noticed a subtle change in Gloria's expression, from defiance to something close to panic. There in the center of that hall, where generations of privileged families had made decisions about the fate of employees, Keisha stood firm, guarding secrets too powerful to be revealed before the time was right. If this story of prejudice disguised as concern touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happened next would show that underestimating people because of their appearance can be the biggest mistake of your life. Gloria was not willing to back down. In her 15 years working for the Whitmore family, she had built a reputation for unquestionable loyalty, and she would not allow an opportunist to destroy her privileged position in the house. "Mr. James, you need to understand what's going on here," she insisted, walking over to the window overlooking the garden where Ruby and Rose were playing for the first time in months. "This woman shows up out of nowhere, with no proper references from respectable families, and suddenly she has magical powers with children? Please." James watched his daughters running freely across the lawn, their laughter echoing for the first time since their mother's funeral. It was impossible to deny the transformation. They were eating regularly, sleeping 8 hours a night, and had even returned to preschool without panic attacks. "Gloria, maybe you're overreacting. The girls are being manipulated." The housekeeper interrupted, her voice rising an octave. "And you don't see it because you're desperate for a solution. But I know her type. They arrive humble, perform temporary miracles, and then start asking for favors." First a raise, then expensive gifts for her family, then access to his accounts. Keisha stood motionless, watching Gloria's dramatic performance with a serene expression that only irritated the housekeeper more. In fact, that reaction was exactly what she had expected from day one. 3 weeks earlier, when she got off the bus at the corner of the Whitmore mansion, Keisha knew exactly what she was getting herself into. Growing up in Detroit, the daughter of a cleaning lady who worked for wealthy families, she had witnessed this same dynamic countless times, established employees protecting their turf against newcomers, especially when those newcomers didn't fit the right profile. What Gloria didn't know was that Keisha Williams had a master's degree in child psychology from a University of Michigan, had worked as a pediatric trauma consultant at 3 hospitals, and had chosen this job for very specific reasons that had nothing to do with money. You know what bothers me the most? Gloria continued, now clearly losing her composure. It's her calmness. A normal woman would be nervous being accused of drugging children. But look at her. She's standing there like she knows something we don't. James frowned. He had to admit that Gloria's observation had some merit. Keisha did display an almost disturbing confidence, like someone who was 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Actually, Keisha said softly, I do know something you don't. The silence was absolute. Gloria paled slightly, as if she had just invoked something she wasn't prepared to face. I know Ruby wakes up at 2:30 in the morning because she dreams she's falling, just like her mother did when the car rolled over, Keisha continued, her voice remaining calm. I know that Rose can't sleep until she checks that all the doors are locked, because in her subconscious, the house isn't safe anymore since Mom left and didn't come back. James felt a chill run down his spine. How did she know such specific details about his daughter's nightmares? He had never told anyone about the accident, about how Amanda had been found. I also know, Keisha continued, now looking directly at Gloria, that you've been telling the other nannies in the neighborhood that this family needs someone of the same social standing to take care of the girls. Very interesting messages in the elite domestic professionals WhatsApp group, aren't they? Gloria's face went from pale to red in a matter of seconds. How did you? I never... Oh, but you did. You even suggested that I was probably here to pull a fast one on the lonely widower. That's a direct quote from your messages last Thursday. James turned slowly to Gloria, an expression of disbelief growing on his face. Is this true? The housekeeper stammered, clearly panicking. How did this woman have access to his private messages? And why did she seem to know exactly which buttons to push? Keisha remained calm, but her eyes flashed with something Gloria finally recognized as danger. Here was a woman who not only knew his secrets, but had come prepared for this exact confrontation. The truth, Mr. Whitmore, is that I took this job because your family needs much more than just a nanny. And Gloria, she smiled softly, has been actively preventing any real progress in this house for much longer than you realize. For the first time since he had known the housekeeper, James saw genuine fear in her eyes. And for the first time since he had hired Keisha, he began to suspect that there was much more to this quiet woman than met the eye. Every accusation Gloria made only seemed to strengthen something inside Keisha, a silent strength that grew in direct proportion to the injustice being tried to be imposed on her, as if every act of contempt was fueling a plan far greater than any of those present could imagine. Do you want to know the truth about what's going on in this house? Keisha asked, her voice maintaining that calm tone that was beginning to unsettle even James. Then let's start at the very beginning. She walked over to the side table and picked up a leather folder that James had never seen before. Gloria, are you sure you want to continue with these accusations? Because once I open this folder, there's no turning back. The panic in the housekeeper's eyes was almost palpable now. Mr. James, she's trying to intimidate us. This is exactly the kind of manipulative behavior I was talking about, but James watched, fascinated by the transformation taking place before his eyes. The woman he had hired as a nanny was revealing layers of complexity that completely defied his expectations. Keisha wasn't just polite, she was strategic. She wasn't just competent, she was formidable. 3 weeks ago when I accepted this job, Keisha continued, opening the folder, it wasn't because I desperately needed a job. It was because I got a very interesting call from someone you know well. She pulled an audio recording from her phone. Dr. Patricia Coleman, the pediatrician who has been treating Ruby and Rose for 2 years. She contacted me after Gloria called to question my professional competence before I even started working here. James felt a chill run down his spine. Gloria, you called the girl's pediatrician? I just wanted to check if she knew this person, Gloria stammered, realizing she had fallen into a trap she didn't even know existed. Keisha pressed play, Dr. Coleman's clear voice echoed through the room. Gloria, I need to tell you something. Keisha Williams is not just an ordinary nanny. She has a master's degree in child psychology and specializes in pediatric trauma. When I heard she had accepted the Whitmore twins, I was intrigued. A professional of her caliber doesn't take domestic work out of necessity. The silence that followed was broken only by the muffled sound of children playing in the garden. James looked at Keisha as if he were seeing her for the first time. You have a master's degree? University of Michigan. I worked at Detroit Children's Hospital for 5 years before opening my own child trauma clinic. Keisha smiled softly. The question, Mr. Whitmore, is why would a psychologist specializing in trauma close a successful clinic to work as a nanny? Gloria was visibly panicking now. That doesn't make sense. If you're so qualified, why? Why did I take a job that pays 1/10 of what I used to earn? Keisha finished the question. Because it wasn't about the money, Gloria. It was about justice. She pulled a series of documents from her briefcase. 6 months ago, James, you fired an employee from your company for cultural incompatibility. Do you remember Marcus Johnson, the black engineer who designed your latest residential complex? James frowned, clearly uncomfortable. Marcus, yes, there were some issues. The issues were that Gloria suggested to your human resources manager that employees like him might not fit in with the Whitmore image. Keisha placed the document on the table. Email, dated March 3rd, copied to 5 people on the board. Gloria turned pale. How do you have access to internal company emails? Because Marcus Johnson is my younger brother. The revelation hit the room like a bomb, and when he told me about the systematic discrimination he suffered here, I decided to personally investigate the family environment that created this kind of professional mentality. James sat down heavily in an armchair, processing the information. His housekeeper, whom he had trusted for 15 years, had actively interfered in business decisions based on racial prejudice, and the woman who was transforming his daughters' lives was the sister of the man he had unfairly fired. Marcus lost his job 2 days before the birth of his 3rd child, Keisha continued, her voice taking on a controlled intensity. He spent 4 months unemployed, almost lost his home, and his wife suffered from postpartum depression without proper treatment because they didn't have health insurance. I didn't know, James murmured, genuinely shocked. Of course you didn't. Gloria made sure you never found out. Keisha turned to the housekeeper. Because people like you operate in the shadows, whispering poison in the ears of those with decision-making power, planting seeds of doubt about the competence of people you consider unsuitable. Gloria tried one last desperate card. Mr. James, she's here to hurt us. It's a trap. She planned all of this. You're right, Gloria. I planned it all. Keisha smiled, but there was something dangerous about that smile, but not to hurt anyone. I planned it to expose the truth about how prejudice operates in families like this, how it seeps into everything from household decisions to corporate ones. She picked up the phone and showed him a series of messages. All of our conversations over the last 21 days have been recorded with legal consent. I informed you on my first day that I would be documenting my work for professional purposes. Every racial comment, every attempt at sabotage, every time you tried to interfere in my relationship with the children. James watched Gloria break down before his eyes. The woman he had respected as a pillar of his home had been systematically exposed as someone who operated from deep and dangerous prejudices. The twins are sleeping because they finally have someone who understands childhood trauma taking care of them, Keisha said. Not because they're being medicated, but because they're being treated by a qualified professional who recognizes the signs of unprocessed grief in young children. She closed the folder and looked directly at James. The question now is, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to continue to allow people like Gloria to influence your decisions about employees and about your own daughters? At that moment, Ruby and Rose came running through the door, their cheeks flushed from playing. Daddy! Keisha! We found a bird's nest in the oak tree. The children's radiant innocence contrasted sharply with the heavy tension in the air. Keisha knelt down to greet them, and James watched as his daughters clung to her with a confidence that had taken months to develop with any adult after their mother's death. For a moment, as he watched the scene, his daughters finally happy. The housekeeper he had trusted exposed as prejudiced, and the woman who had saved his family, revealing herself as someone seeking justice for her own brother. James realized he was at the center of a lesson about how privilege and power can be used both to perpetuate injustice and to correct it. But what neither James nor Gloria knew yet was that Keisha had documented much more than conversations and messages. She had uncovered connections between Gloria's domestic discrimination and Whitmore's corporate practices that went far beyond his brother's case. Connections that, once revealed, would not only destroy a career, but potentially rewrite the way the entire business elite of the city thought about social responsibility and the consequences of their prejudices. The twins' entrance momentarily broke the tension, but Keisha knew that this was exactly the moment she had been waiting for weeks. Ruby rose. How about showing Daddy and Gloria the drawing you did yesterday about our nighttime routine? The girls ran excitedly to fetch their drawings, leaving the three adults in a heavy silence. Gloria seized the moment to try one last desperate attack. Mr. James, she's even manipulating the children. This is proof that… Gloria, Keisha interrupted softly, picking up her tablet. Are you sure you want to continue? Because we still have 15 minutes of footage from Ruby's birthday party last month, when you told Mrs. Henderson that people like me shouldn't have access to children from traditional families. Gloria's face turned from red to a deathly white. The birthday party had been an important social event, with at least 20 elite families in attendance, if those recordings became public. I also have your messages to the Premium Executive Nannies WhatsApp group, Keisha continued, swiping through the screen, where you shared photos of me without permission, speculating about my true intentions with the family. James stepped closer, taking the tablet from Keisha's hands. His features hardened as he read the messages. Gloria, you shared photos of my daughter's nanny with strangers, discussing our private life. Mr. James, I was just being cautious. Cautious. James's voice rose an octave. You violated my family's privacy, spread personal information, and even had the audacity to interfere in my business decisions based on racial prejudice. Keisha watched the dynamic with controlled satisfaction. She had planned each revelation carefully, knowing that James's pride as a father and businessman would be the most powerful weapon against Gloria's toxic influence. But there's more, she said, opening another folder on her tablet. Gloria, do you remember recommending the dismissal of 3 black employees from Whitmore in the last 2 years? Always with seemingly technical justifications. The silence was absolute. James looked at his housekeeper as if he were seeing her for the first time. Jennifer Watson, financial analyst, fired after Gloria suggested that people like her might not fit in with the company's conservative corporate culture. David Miller, architect, transferred to the least prestigious department after Gloria commented on his suitability for the clientele profile. And my brother Marcus, of course. How do you have access to this inside information? James asked, genuinely confused. Because after Marcus was fired, I began systematically investigating the firing patterns at your company. I discovered that Gloria was in regular contact with 5 people in your human resources department, always offering insights about employees based on observations she made during social events and family gatherings. Keisha showed him a detailed spreadsheet. Over the past 3 years, 16 black or Latino employees have been fired or demoted from Whitmore Industries. In 60% of the cases, there was an email or phone call from Gloria in the files, always suggesting cultural concerns or questions about fit for the environment. James sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. My God, Gloria, is this true? The housekeeper finally broke down. I just wanted to protect the family's reputation. People like her don't understand our values, our tradition. Our values, James exploded. What values are those? Discrimination? Prejudice? Destroying the lives of competent people based on the color of their skin? At that moment, Ruby and Rose came running back with their drawings. Look! It's Keisha reading us a story, exclaimed Rose, showing a colorful drawing of a black woman sitting between 2 children, all smiling. And here she is teaching us about the stars, added Ruby, showing another drawing where Keisha pointed to a starry sky, while the girls looked up in wonder. The innocence of the drawings contrasted brutally with the poisonous reality that had been exposed in the room. James looked at his daughters, finally happy, finally sleeping well, finally confident, and realized the magnitude of the injustice he had allowed to flourish under his own roof. Gloria, he said, his voice now controlled but relentless, you're fired. I want you out of this house today. Mr. James, please. 15 years of service. 15 years influencing my decisions with prejudice, he corrected. 15 years sabotaging competent employees. 15 years poisoning the environment of my home and my company. Keisha picked up one last folder from his materials. James, there's one more thing you need to know. Gloria didn't just influence firings, she also blocked hires. She showed him a series of resumes. 23 highly qualified candidates were rejected in the last 2 years, after Gloria did informal checks on their families and backgrounds. Among them were 2 engineers with degrees from MIT, an award-winning architect, and an analyst with an MBA from Harvard. All black or Latino, James noted, scanning the resumes. Professionals who could have contributed significantly to the company. Exactly. Meanwhile, less qualified candidates who fit Gloria's right profile were hired at higher salaries and in better positions. Gloria made one last desperate attempt. Mr. James, she set this all up. It's a conspiracy against me. Conspiracy. Keisha laughed softly. Gloria, it would be a conspiracy if I had invented your words, forged your emails, created your WhatsApp messages. All I did was document and organize your own actions. James turned to his daughters, who were watching the tension between the adults with confusion. Girls, how about we go out to the garden while the adults finish talking? When the children left, he faced Gloria one last time. You have 1 hour to pack your bags. I don't want to see you on this property again. What about the company? Keisha asked. James took a deep breath. Tomorrow morning, I'll conduct a complete audit of the hiring and firing processes for the last 3 years. All affected employees will be contacted with offers of reinstatement or compensation. Gloria stumbled out of the room, completely defeated. 15 years of influence and power had crumbled in less than an hour in the face of her own evidence of discriminatory conduct. Keisha watched the housekeeper leave, feeling a deep but controlled satisfaction. It wasn't cruelty. It was pure justice, served with surgical precision. Why? James asked when they were alone. Why go to all this trouble, come here, take care of my daughters, face all this prejudice just to expose Gloria? Because injustice unchallenged is injustice perpetuated, Keisha replied simply. And because Ruby and Rose deserve to grow up in an environment where competence matters more than skin color. But there was one last revelation that neither James nor Gloria knew yet, a discovery Keisha had made about the true connections between Gloria's domestic discrimination and a much larger network of systematic exclusion that extended throughout the city's business elite and that was about to transform not just one family, but an entire corporate culture based on unquestioned privilege. 6 months later, the transformation in the Whitmore twins' lives was only a small part of a much larger revolution that Keisha had quietly orchestrated. Marcus Johnson sat in his new office at Whitmore Industries, now as Director of Sustainable Development, a position created especially to leverage his expertise in inclusive housing projects. The salary was 40% higher than his previous one, and he had received a stake in the company as compensation for his months of unemployment. I still can't believe my sister did all this, he told James during one of their weekly meetings, which now included discussions about corporate diversity. She planned every move for months. James smiled, looking out the window at the new community garden the company had created on the vacant lot next door, a project led by 3 of the employees who had been reinstated after the audit. Your sister didn't just save my daughters, she saved my company from becoming obsolete in a world that no longer tolerates systematic discrimination. The full audit had revealed an even more extensive pattern than James had imagined. 23 employees were reinstated or compensated appropriately. 5 supervisors who had actively participated in the discriminatory practices were fired. The company implemented a new blind hiring protocol, where resumes were evaluated without photos or names that could reveal ethnic origin. Gloria, for her part, discovered that 15 years of influence based on prejudice did not build a solid professional network. None of the elite families rehired her after Keisha's recordings circulated discreetly in the nanny's WhatsApp groups. She was now working at a chain hotel, earning less than half of what she had earned at the Whitmore mansion. The most impressive thing, James continued, is that she never wanted to destroy anyone. She wanted to transform the system. Keisha had declined James's offer to become a permanent consultant for the company. Instead, she used her documented experience to start a consulting firm specializing in identifying and correcting institutional bias. Her first client was a Detroit hospital network facing lawsuits over racial discrimination in patient care. Ruby and Rose, now 5, attended a more diverse school that James had chosen specifically to broaden their world. Keisha still visited them twice a week, no longer as a nanny, but as Aunt Keisha, the woman who had turned nightmares into peaceful dreams and taught them that families are built on love, not prejudice. Daddy, is Aunt Keisha coming to my birthday? Rose asked over breakfast, wearing the star necklace she never took off. Of course, Princess. And your Uncle Marcus too, James replied, still surprised at how natural it felt to call Keisha's brother family. The true measure of Keisha's success was not in the impressive numbers of her consulting firm, or the 23 employees she had helped get rehired at Whitmore Industries. It was in the call she received the week before from a young black mother in Chicago, who had seen her interview on a social justice podcast. My 6-year-old son is being discriminated against at school, the woman said. The teachers say he's troubled, but I know he's smart. Can you help me document what's going on? Keisha smiled, picking up a new notebook. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me everything you've noticed. Because the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you, it's building bridges where there were walls, creating opportunities where there was exclusion, and turning pain into purpose. James Whitmore learned that privilege without awareness is a dangerous weapon, but privilege with purpose can rewrite entire histories. Gloria tried to use prejudice as power, but discovered that hatred always builds sandcastles. Keisha used intelligence as justice and built a legacy that will last for generations. If this story of transformation through courage has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, because sometimes changing the world starts with one person brave enough to document the truth and strategic enough to use it with surgical precision.